Welcome to Dr. Ishinaria's Deep Dish Dialogues. Today we're diving deep into a really fascinating idea called Moravec's paradox.
Yeah, it's a great one. And for you, the learner, if you enjoy those aha moments and, want to get up to speed quickly without feeling totally overwhelmed, this paradox, it throws a really surprising light on the differences between us and AI.
Exactly. We're going to try and unpack the core of it. Why are things that seem, well, almost effortless for us, like knowing a friend's face instantly, even in a crowd? Why is that so incredibly hard for computers?
Right, while at the same time, those computers can crunch complex calculations that would take us ages, almost instantly.
It's that reversal.
Yeah.
And the source material we're digging into today, Moravec's paradox and existential questions, it's not just some dry academic paper, is it?
Not at all. It's really a launch pad for some pretty profound questions. We're talking consciousness, the nature of reality, ethics, even what it means to be human as technology keeps accelerating.
So our mission today is to pull out the most compelling bits from this piece, connect the dots for you in a way that hopefully sparks some curiosity, and gives you a solid handle on why this paradox actually matters.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's dive in. What exactly is Moravec's paradox, like in a nutshell?
Okay, so at its heart, Moravec's paradox points out this really unexpected flip. Things that are easy for humans based on billions of years of evolution skills like perception, recognizing patterns, moving around in the physical world, picking up on emotions.
It's stuff we barely think about.
Exactly. That stuff is incredibly difficult for AI. But then the things that require a lot of conscious thought and training for us, abstract reasoning, complex math, playing chess, processing huge data sets.
Those are becoming almost trivial for AI.
Precisely. It just completely turns our usual assumptions about what's hard and easy upside down.
Right. The paper gives some good examples like facial recognition. It's gotten way better, but weird lighting, a different angle, you can still mess things up.
Or think about a robot trying to walk across uneven ground, like a rocky beach. A toddler figures it out eventually, through trial and error, right? Programming that kind of adaptable physical competence is still a massive challenge.
Yeah, but ask a computer to calculate complex physics equations or, I don't know, analyze global financial markets. No problem.
It's that contrast. That's the core aha moment, I think. It forces you to appreciate the sheer computational power behind our seemingly simple, intuitive skills.
It really does. Okay, so this paradox naturally leads into some deep philosophical territory. Let's start with consciousness. The paper asks, if an AI gets so good it can perfectly simulate being conscious, is it?
Ah, yes, the big question. And it connects to the Turing test, which the source mentions. The idea that if you can't tell if you're talking to a human or a machine, maybe the machine should be considered intelligent.
But Moravec's paradox adds another layer, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not just about intelligent behavior, it's about, well, is there anything going on inside?
Exactly. It pushes us towards that question of subjective experience, what philosophers call qualia. The actual feeling of seeing red or tasting chocolate or feeling sad. Can an AI, even a super sophisticated one, actually have those raw feelings?
The paper points out the scientific view, which might say consciousness is just an emergent property.
Yeah.
Like get enough complex processing, like in our brains, and boom, consciousness just sort of happens.
Right. From that perspective, if an AI reached a similar level of complexity, maybe consciousness would emerge. It's a logical argument based on neurobiology.
But the philosophical counter is strong too, isn't it? That simulation isn't the same as the real thing. It could be an incredibly convincing puppet show, but with no actual puppeteer feeling anything inside.
Precisely. It could be a perfect imitation, but fundamentally empty of genuine experience. And honestly, we don't have a definitive way to know yet.
It's a tough one. And this connects to another fascinating point in the paper. The nature of reality itself, and specifically mathematics. How does the paradox tie into that?
Well, the paradox highlights how computers excel at abstract, logical tasks like math. This kind of lends itself to an idea called mathematical realism, which the source brings up.
Okay, what's that?
It's the idea that math isn't just something humans invented. It's like embedded in the fabric of the universe itself. Math describes the underlying structure of reality.
Huh. So if math is fundamental to reality, maybe AI finds it easier to tap into that structure because AI operates on logic and symbols already, whereas our intelligence is more evolved for messy physical interaction.
That's one way to interpret it, definitely. It fits the paradox quite neatly. But then there's the other view,
Which is?
that math is more like a language, a very powerful, useful language that we develop to describe and manipulate the world.
So in that view, AI being good at math just means it's good at manipulating the symbols of this human-created system, not necessarily tapping into some deep reality.
Exactly. It becomes more about symbol processing skill rather than inherent understanding of a fundamental cosmic structure. The paradox doesn't solve this debate, but it definitely gives you fuel for thought on both sides.
Okay, so moving from the abstract to the very practical ethics,
Mhm.
the paper gets into responsibility, especially with autonomous systems. This feels really relevant now.
Oh, absolutely critical. Our current legal frameworks, they're built around human agency, right? Someone designs it, someone builds it, someone uses it. There's always a person somewhere to hold responsible.
What happens when the AI itself makes the crucial decision? The source uses the self-driving car example. If it crashes, whose fault is it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is it the AI, which isn't a legal person? Is it the programmer who wrote the algorithm? What if the situation was totally unforeseen?
Or the manufacturer?
Mm.
Or the owner who maybe didn't maintain it properly? It gets complicated fast.
Incredibly fast. And think about scaling this up. Autonomous weapons systems, AI making medical diagnostic decisions. The more autonomy we give AI, the blurrier those lines of responsibility become.
We haven't really figured out how to handle that yet, have we?
Not even close. It's a huge challenge for law, for ethics, for society as a whole. Does accountability always have to trace back to a human? Or do we need new concepts of responsibility for autonomous agents? Big questions.
Definitely. And this leads into another area the paper touches on: the increasing integration of humans and machines. Brain-computer interfaces, augmentations.
Yeah, the whole transhumanism discussion, there's obviously a lot of excitement about potential enhancements, overcoming limitations, maybe extending life.
But the source injects a note of caution, right,
Oh,
about potentially losing something fundamental.
it does. It prompts us to ask, what actually makes us human? Is it just our intelligence, our consciousness? Or is it also our emotions, our empathy, our physical bodies, even the fact that we're mortal?
If we start altering those core aspects through technology, are we fundamentally changing what it means to be human? And is that always a good thing?
It raises questions about our essence. Are we willing to trade parts of our evolved nature for potentially greater capabilities? Where do we draw the line before we become something else? It's less about the tech itself and more about the philosophical choices we make about using it.
Now, the paper also connects the paradox, maybe a bit indirectly, to free will. How does that link work?
Well, think about the paradox again. Those simple human actions, walking, seeing, reacting, they're underpinned by incredibly complex, evolved biological machinery in our brains and bodies.
Stuff happening below our conscious awareness.
Exactly. And neuroscience increasingly suggests that many of our decisions, maybe even all of them, arise from these complex but potentially deterministic neural processes. The feeling of choosing might come after the brain has already initiated the action.
So if our basic actions, the ones AI finds hard, are rooted in these deterministic processes, what does that say about our higher level choices? The ones AI finds easy.
It adds weight to the idea that maybe free will, in the sense of being a completely independent causal agent, might be more limited than we feel it is. The source acknowledges, though, that the subjective experience of having free will is incredibly important to us philosophically and existentially.
Even if it's an illusion, it's a pretty convincing and important one.
It seems to be fundamental to how we understand ourselves and morality.
Now, the source throws another curveball into the mix. Quantum computing. How could that change the picture?
Yeah, this is really fascinating. Quantum computing operates on principles totally different from classical computers. Instead of just zeros and ones, you have qubits that can be 0, 1, or both at the same time, superposition, and they can be linked in weird ways, entanglement.
Which introduces uncertainty, probability.
Exactly. At the quantum level, reality seems fundamentally probabilistic, not rigidly deterministic. If quantum effects play a significant role in how our brains work, which is still debated, by the way, it could challenge that purely deterministic view of neuroscience.
So it might open the door back up for a less predictable, maybe more free kind of process.
Potentially, it could reshape our understanding of cause and effect, maybe even concepts like objective reality. It adds a whole layer of, let's say, fundamental fuzziness that could impact both philosophy and ethics down the line. It's still early days, but it's a powerful idea.
Okay, and this all leads to thinking about limits. The paper discusses ethical boundaries in scientific exploration, particularly things like genetic manipulation or trying to create artificial consciousness.
Right. Just because we can do something, should we? Especially when we're talking about fundamentally altering life or potentially creating new forms of consciousness with unknown consequences.
Who gets to decide where those boundaries are? Scientists, governments, society as a whole?
That's the crux of it. It involves balancing the potential benefits of research against the potential risks, including, existential risks if things go badly wrong. It requires a really broad conversation that we're arguably only just beginning to have.
And this ties back into that determinism idea too, right? The nature of reality.
Yeah, if reality is fundamentally deterministic, as classical physics might suggest, then in principle, everything is predictable, including human behavior.
Which sounds useful maybe for predicting crime or something.
Exactly. You can see the potential utilitarian arguments, but then what about individual liberty, privacy, the right to be unpredictable? If our actions are predetermined, does that change how we think about praise and blame?
It pits potential societal benefits against deeply held values about freedom and individuality. That tension is right there.
And the quantum perspective adds another layer. Maybe reality isn't fully deterministic. Maybe it's fundamentally probabilistic. That changes the ethical landscape again.
Okay, one last big area the paper touches on: personal identity, especially as we head into a more digital future.
This one feels very sci-fi, but the questions are real. Moravec's paradox makes us think about what makes us us, beyond just our logical processing. The paper explores the idea of digitizing consciousness, uploading minds, creating digital copies.
If you could do that, what happens to you? Philosophically, we often think of identity tied to our continuous stream of consciousness, our memories.
Right. But what if you could make multiple perfect digital copies? Which one is the real you? Do they all have the same rights, the same responsibilities for past action?
Our traditional notions of a single unique self kind of break down, don't they?
They really do. Concepts like personhood, individuality, accountability, that all get incredibly complicated in that scenario. Again, it forces us back to fundamental questions about what identity truly consists of.
Wow. Okay, so pulling this all together, it's clear that this deep dive into Moravec's paradox goes way, way beyond just, why can't my robot vacuum clean the corners properly?
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting for you, the learner. This paradox isn't just an AI problem, it's a human problem. It forces us, compels us really, to confront these massive questions about who we are, what reality is, and how we should navigate the future with these incredibly powerful tools we're building.
And that thought, if the things we find most intuitive, most natural, seeing, weaving, feeling, if those are the actual peak of biological intelligence, honed over eons, what does that really tell us about what it means to be smart? Maybe it's not just about chess and calculus.
Precisely. It suggests a different hierarchy of intelligence, perhaps. This deep dive hopefully gives you a new lens, a way to look at both human smarts and AI's progress, realizing that some of the deepest insights come from these weird, unexpected paradoxes where technology meets philosophy.
So what stands out to you listening to this? What's the most surprising or maybe unsettling aspect of Moravec's paradox and its implications?
It's definitely just the start of a much, much bigger conversation.